So I don't have like an exact formulated question, but I've been noticing some themes in my life, which is like the resistance to the process, surrendering, and then free will. So bouncing between these. Is it possible to speak something about this in the process? Like, yeah, the resistance that, oh, I don't want to do this. And then there's the free will and yeah, acceptance,
Yeah.
surrender.
Right, right. So I think all three of those states of being are valid. They all serve some purpose. That's why they exist. That's why we have those experiences. So it's not so much that we are doing something wrong if we are in a state of resistance. It's not so much that we're doing something wrong if we are employing free will when we quote unquote should be surrendering. They all serve a purpose. They all serve a purpose. Um, of course, the further we get along our evolutionary journey, our journey of growth, maybe we begin to realize that resistance no longer serves. In the past, maybe it did, right? It gave us some sense of control when situations were challenging. It was good to resist. It helped us. But as we move into more evolved ways of operating, we see, there's actually a different way of being. There is a flow, there is a higher force and intelligence, the Tao, right, that I can flow with and move with, right? What happens is that sometimes people become aware of this and then they begin to beat themselves up when they're not fully surrendered to the flow. So we don't want to beat ourselves up, right? We want to acknowledge, yeah, the flow is there, but sometimes we're able to get into it and sometimes we're not, and that's okay. Sometimes we fall into old habits and we begin to resist. That's okay. That's okay. So over time, our nervous system, as we go through this process, our nervous system will become more and more trained into being able to relax more easily. And when we relax, then we can move more into the flow. We get out of our mind and move more into the flow. Comes and goes intermittently. It's a practice, it's a dance, it's a walk on the razor's edge. And ultimately, it doesn't matter in the big picture, if you ask me, because all there ultimately is the flow. Even resistance is the flow. Even living as if you have free will, that is part of the divine will. That's part of the flow, paradoxically. So one way I've conceptualized it is that it is like a really powerful river. We are swimming down that river. We can lay on our back and go with the flow where that river's going and have a great experience. We can kick and scream. We're still going to go to the same place. We can try to swim upstream as well. We won't get very far. We may swim on the spot. We may get a little bit, but eventually we'll get tired and the flow will take us anyway. So ultimately, it doesn't matter what you do in the river's going to take you where it's going to take you, right? So it comes down to what type of experience you would like to have along the way. Would you like to have an experience of laying on your back, relaxing, and going with the flow? Would you like to have an experience of swimming upstream? Maybe that can be a little fun and interesting. Sure. Ultimately, it's okay. It's nothing better or worse per se. It's just what type of experience would you like to have? And for some, until their nervous system is ready to surrender and relax, well, then we have to fight and push and resist and whatnot and control, and that's okay. That's okay. So we want to be gentle with ourselves and not essentially use our spirituality against ourselves, right? We don't want to use any spiritual insights that we have to then beat ourselves up and say, I'm not doing it right. We also want to be gentle with the nervous system and acknowledge why we may resist, why we may want to be in a state of control. What older stories are still at play? What older trauma is still influencing our relationships? But our relationship to life. And rather than trying to invalidate those stories or those experiences or that trauma, we want to just investigate it a bit and say, hey, yeah, it makes sense that we would want to control sometimes. We went through some things where control was what kept us, alive or kept us safe, right? So all valid, all valid. Over time, the more we heal, eventually we come to see that we are safe enough to relax and the flow will take us. And then what's interesting is when the flow takes you, and you get so used to just going with the flow, then even the question falls away of whether I'm surrendered or I'm in control or I'm resisting, even all of that just falls away. It's all welcome again. And then what happens is kind of like we return back to how we were before we knew anything of this. Because before we knew anything about the flow, it wasn't in our mind. We were just going through life. But from the other side of the journey, when we return back into that place, now we have a sense of the flow and we can also let it go. And it's just an interesting place to be. Very, very interesting place to be. And that's what I think we may refer to as integration or maturity. Right? The questions fall away and there's just the experience happening without judgment. So I hope that can help. Hope that can help.